please welcome the President and CEO of the Community Foundation of East Central Illinois, Ms. Joan Dixon.
Thank you, and I'm going to ask that you bring up the lights too, because when you guys start to nod off, I'll know that's when I need to stop talking. I may continue talking anyway. So I'm going to talk a little bit about community. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Community Foundation of East Central Illinois and how we kind of grew, because there are many similarities. But first, I'm going to tell a story about Maggie Flanagan. So Maggie is one of the first people I met in the Community Foundation world. The Grand Victoria Foundation called us all together to a meeting up in, I think it was Wheaton, Illinois. And I walked in the room and there were a bunch of people and there were name tags. And one said Margaret Flanagan. I said, well, I got to meet Margaret Flanagan. That was my aunt's name and I loved my aunt. So I sat down next to Maggie and I said, where are you from? She said, I'm from Carbondale. And I said, I know Carbondale. My brother, Bill Dixon, used to be the city manager in Carbondale. And Maggie said, I know Bill Dixon, and I know your nephew, Patrick. And it turns out that a lot of people knew Patrick. Yeah. But anyway, I'm happy to say that Maggie and I have had occasions to run into each other over the years. And she's a very special person and is so integral to the growth of your community foundation. But, yeah. So what is a community? Obviously, by definition, it's a social unit, a group of living things with commonality. It may be religion, values, customs, identity. And you share a sense of place with your community. And that's why a community foundation, it's a perfect name because we are geographically defined. In the state of Illinois, there are about 22 community foundations that are staffed and have national standards, and we try to cover the entire state of Illinois. Now, there is one really big community foundation. It's called the Chicago Community Trust. But throughout the state of Illinois, we have in community foundations about $4 billion. And we have 3,500 individual funds. And we give out $150 million in grants every year. So it's not an inconsequential part of how we fund our communities. So who do you call in time of need? You call your family, your friends, church maybe, government. You call your neighbors. And why do you do that? Because they're part of your community. And how do you help your community? Well, you can give some individual gifts to the different nonprofits. You can establish a non-endowed fund with the community foundation so you can spend the money as you wish. And you can establish an endowment. You can leave a legacy. And why would you do that? Because, you know, when you die, there are 3 C's that you can do with your money. You can give it to Congress. And while we love our politicians, that might be not the first choice for all of us. You can give it to your children, probably a good choice, and you can give it to charity. In the state of Illinois, as you may know, the inheritance tax rate hits at a little over $4 million. It's different than that on a federal level, but it's one of those things many people throughout the state of Illinois have to consider. And why would you leave a legacy? Well, you want to give back to your community. This is where you live. This is where you derive benefits. This is where you've made your money, probably. You have kids that have been in Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. You have your church. You have all these things that make your community, and you've benefited from the community. So one of the things we suggest in the community foundation world is that you leave 5% as a legacy to your community foundation. Now, your family can get by with 95% of your assets, but 5% is just enough to be able to continue to give to your community. So how do you leave a legacy? Well, you create an endowment. As Byron said, that's one of the best ways to continue living after you've gone. Continue giving. There's a fellow in Champaign named Ed Charlo, who recently retired as the chairman of the board of the Busey Corporation. And Ed always says, Ed has an endowment with us, and he likes the endowment, but he also likes to give money while he's still alive, because he says, if you're giving while you're living, you're knowing where it's going. But when you create an endowment, you can do the same thing, because you can specify where you want that money to go. Or you can say, you know what, the community foundation is going to be around here forever. Let my endowment go to what's important to the community foundation and the community. You can create an endowment with gifts of cash. Cash is always good. Stocks, life insurance. We in East Central Illinois recently have gotten quite a few of these required minimum distributions. I was sitting next to a lady the other day and she said, you know what, I'm just going to send you my RMD. I don't need the money. I got a little fun with you anyway. I'm just going to make that grow. And I'm like, oh, okay, if you must. And you can also give gifts of property. Again, in our area, we have a lot of centennial farms. So they've been in the family forever, and the family isn't really interested in letting it go or letting it be sold or giving it, to somebody they don't know. So they'll place the property with us. They can't, legally, I guess for estate tax purposes, you can't require that it can't be sold. But I can pretty much guarantee you, if you give a community foundation the property that's important to you, we will continue to help steward that in your memory. And then, of course, the earnings off that property will go to whatever's important to you. Byron asked me to talk just a little bit about the Community Foundation of East Central Illinois, because there are similarities, as I said. When I started with the foundation in 2002, we were the Community Foundation of Champaign County. And the problem with that was we couldn't give grants outside of Champaign County. So we took a look at our area and we thought, well, let's just expand it to East Central Illinois. And Maggie noted that the growth had been slow but very steady. Our foundation started in 1972 with $1,300. 30 years later, when I started with the foundation, we had $3.5 million. So it was very slow growth. When we started out, I think the first grant we gave was $100. And that was all the grant money for the year. By the time we had that $3.5 million, we were given about $25,000 a year. Fast forward, we now have, with property and with some life insurance policies, we have close to $40 million. So that growth comes. And it comes because people start to understand what it is they can do through the Community Foundation, how they can satisfy all their charitable intents through the Community Foundation. We cover now all or part of 9 counties, with the largest being Champaign County, Vermilion, and Piatt County. We have donors in all those areas. We make distributions in all those areas. For the last 7 years, we've been able to give over $1 million a year to usually about 140 different nonprofits in East Central Illinois. We have 38 scholarship funds, and so about 99.5% of the distributions we make stay in East Central Illinois. The other % are kids who, for some reason, decide to go to college someplace else. Who knew? Maybe they come to Southern Illinois. That'd be okay. We'd let them do that. And we do a lot of work with nonprofits. And we want nonprofits to be as good as they can be, but we're really a little more selfish than that. We want those nonprofits to do well with our money, and we want those nonprofits to be of such a high caliber that when a donor says to us, I would like to give money to this nonprofit, we can say, well, you know what? We've been able to work with them. They're really good. We're going to continue working with them. And so the programs that Byron mentioned, the 5 or 6 different programs, seminars that are coming up, that's all geared to help nonprofits. So you as donors can feel assured that the money is going where it needs to go. So if you want to, if you have a need, you want to help those in need, who are you going to call? You're not going to call the Ghostbusters. You're going to call your community foundation. Thank you.